Unlock your innate abilities for health. Core conversations. Core conversations.
Welcome to the Core Conversations podcast by Ampelis, where our goal is to help you fuel, use, and rest your bodies in ways that unlock its innate abilities for physical and mental health. My name is Robbie Harmon, and I'll be your host. Welcome to another episode of Core Conversations, where our goal is to help you fuel, use, and rest your bodies in ways that unlock its innate abilities for physical and mental health. Today, we have a really interesting conversation, one that I've been very excited about since I met our guest, Chase Faldmo, a month ago, approximately. And we'll tell you more about Chase and who he is. But our topic today is going to be all about something foundational, and that is power, energy. Like where not necessarily motivation and psychological, energy, but literally energy that fuels and moves and helps us function as human beings physiologically. And I know you've got some very unique insights and some interesting ideas that are intriguing and causing a lot of people to want to learn more. So thank you for being here, Chase.
Thank you for having me.
So thrilled. Chase and I met at a launch event we had for our company, where we were introducing Core 7, which is this, whole food based micronutrient, broad spectrum micronutrient supplement product that we're excited about. We might talk about that a little bit later, but there were some interesting things that happened there that, one, after, first of all, meeting your wife was absolutely delightful and made me think that if actually I talked to her before I talked to you, and I said, if this gal likes that guy must be pretty cool. So, anyway, but I'm grateful for you taking time to do this with us tonight.
Well, thank you for having me.
So let's start with your background. Mm-hmm. First of all, it's been fun getting to know your background because you're a person that's driven by faith. Maybe tell us the story. You recently relocated your family. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing, and then maybe your background that has led to this all.
Yeah, recently in June, we actually relocated from Texas to Utah, and I'm born and raised in Texas. I've lived in other states too. I never thought I'd ever leave Texas again. But, you have a plan for your life, but I believe in a higher power. And we felt prompted and called by God to come here. So it was a leap of faith. We've done it, but we've loved it so far.
So glad. We're glad you're here.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot to uproot your family. Mm-hmm. You've got 4 kids, 10 to 2. Mm-hmm. And so that's busy, and they're in school. They're, whether it's homeschool now. Are they in homeschool in Texas too?
Homeschool in Texas too. Yep.
So, but still you're uprooting and you're finding new friends and community, all of those things. So it's a big undertaking, but it was done on a prompting.
Yep.
Which is a cool way to live your life.
Yeah. Not an easy way, but the cool way. It always works out in the end, right?
Well, tell us if you would, just about your professional journey, but maybe preceding that, like what prompted you to get into what you're doing, and then maybe let's culminate with what you're doing now here in Utah and how you're structuring your business.
Absolutely. So my journey started growing up. I was an athlete, love sports. And so I was a football, basketball guy, but I played multiple sports, but I ended up being primarily football, basketball. And what happened was I developed something called a hydrocele. So don't know if you know what a hydrocele is.
Educate us.
I'm an open book, so I'll throw it out there. It's fluid accumulation in the testes. So it got to be so big and painful and awkward socially, right, that I had to have surgery on it. But it's just a routine surgical procedure. So after surgery, the surgery went well, but I was given painkillers and anti-inflammatories. So what happened is those burned large ulcers in my stomach. So to try to correct that, I was given more meds. And what ended up happening is that depleted the acid in my stomach. So basically my food would sit and ferment in my system. So I lost 50 pounds, went to all the best doctors.
How old were you at this time?
So I had my surgery when I was 16.
So teenager, right in the throes of sports and high school social life and
Yep.
everything.
Yeah, exactly. And on top of that, little background information, I moved almost every year of high school. Lived in 3 different states, 4 different high schools. So yeah, this would have been my second high school I was at when this happened. But yeah, I got super sick, lost 50 pounds, went to all the best doctors across the country on paper. None of them could help me. They did every single test possible, colonoscopy, endoscopies, every blood test, every type of imaging. They said, well, we don't know why you're sick, and we don't know why you're not getting better. There's nothing we can do. Good luck. So at that point, we fast forward, this is almost my senior year. So I started getting sick when I was a sophomore in high school. Yeah, 16. And then close to when I turned 18, I was near the end. We even called the Mayo Clinic, and they said, you've been to the doctors that trained us. They did every single test we would have done. There's nothing we can do. Good luck. So at that point, I don't know, it was a miracle I was alive. So by the grace of God, I was introduced to the principles of frequency physics, nutrition, toxins. And I used these principles, and I started noticing a difference in my health within 2 weeks. And then after a year, I was completely better after being sick and almost dying for 2 years. So there's hope for me. There's hope for anyone. Wow. So what's amazing is a couple of days before I started using these principles, my heart rate was only 36 beats a minute. So it was a miracle I was alive.
Your body was dying.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it should be around 60, right? 36 is very low. And then the day I started using these principles, before I started using them, my blood pressure was only 80/40. And it should be 120/80. So extremely low. So yeah, again, by the grace of God, grateful for these principles. I wouldn't be here without them. And as I've studied and learned more and more, I always say all healing comes from Him. These are just tools and instruments in His hands, right? So yeah, after I met my wife in high school, and I was able to get better. I went to college for a year, and I was able to be healthy enough to go on a 2-year church mission. And I came back, my wife and I got married, and I finished my undergrad, and I looked into different professions, but I was led to chiropractic. So I moved back to Dallas after getting my undergrad up here, and I went to chiropractic school, got my doctorate in chiropractic, and once I graduated, I started using the same principles that helped save my life. And now I've been blessed that I've been able to treat so many people around the world suffering with most unique conditions using these principles. And so, yeah, that's what I do now.
It's amazing. And so you're here in Utah. You see people both in person, but also virtually. You've got a business model that allows you to have membership kind of model participation where you can provide education and consultation and other things through this membership plan. Yeah. Correct?
Correct. Yeah.
You've written a couple books. Maybe tell us, you've written a couple books. What are those books?
Yeah. So first book I wrote on toxins because when my kidneys were healthy enough, I was tested for using something called chelation therapy. So when you get a heavy metal test through the blood, it's not as accurate because what happens is when we get a heavy metal exposure, it's in our blood about 24 hours, and then because it's molecularly heavy, it ends up sinking in the deep tissues. So when my kidneys were healthy enough, I had something called a chelation test. That's where they put chelate agents in an IV, and it draws the heavy metals out of the fat tissue, and it dumps it into the urinary system for you to eliminate through the urine. So when my kidneys were healthy enough back when I was sick, I was tested for 13 C's of mercury poisoning, which is actually really high. And so ever since then, and I actually ate pretty well. I mean, I say I ate well. I eat well now. Back then, I didn't eat so well. I didn't know any better, right? But compared to what other people would eat, I was still better than the average person. But that gave me a huge passion for toxins. So when I originally was doing my detoxing for mercury, I had to get chelation therapy, which was pretty brutal and pretty long. And so it worked, right? I went from 13 C's to 3 C's. I got most of it out. But with how time and expensive it was, it I thought there's got to be a better way. So I figured out more efficient ways to detox the body using frequency and physics. And so my first book was on toxins and how to do that. So I teach people how to do it. My next book, interesting story. One of the things I do is I check people's cranial nerves, because your cranial nerves fire everyday function: blinking, breathing, swallowing, you name it. And interestingly, in around that 2020 era, 2021, I had more and more even young people coming who had libido and intimacy issues. And one of the things I found is because I checked people's nerves, I found a correlation. And so because I found these correlations, my second book's on intimacy. Because a lot of people don't know, the most powerful sexual organs, not the genitals, it's the brain and the nerves. So
How do you check cranial nerves?
Oh, well,
I know maybe this is taking us down a rabbit hole.
This is deep, but I can go in some detail. So kind of like when we were talking a little bit earlier, we talked about our healthcare system right now is a lot of thing is insurance based.
Systemic reimbursement challenges drive suboptimal care patterns. They don't allow providers to care for patients the way they should. They don't give them enough time, et cetera, et cetera. They don't reimburse for services that really would help, especially the foundational, like integrative type services, all the things.
Yep. You got it. So that's exactly what I hear from patients all the time is I can't take insurance because the insurance companies make practitioners see like 60 to 90 patients a day to get reimbursement. And when you have to see someone so fast, you can't really check things. And so when I check the cranial nerves, you have to check nerves in a specific order, but also we have sensory nerves and we have motor nerves. So sensory is like from outside coming up to the brain, motors from the brain out. When I check the nerves, I check the motor first, and then I check sensory. That gives us more accurate results. Because if you check the other way, if you put sensory in, it's going to change the output.
Interesting.
So when I check people's nerves, which is kind of cool, you can do it in person, but you also do it over telemedicine, which is what I had to learn to do with COVID and all the shutdowns. People couldn't travel and see, right? But I was able to, when you're able to check the nerves accurately, it tells you a story of what's going on. And based on all these patterns I saw, I was able to figure out, okay, this is why people are having these issues, and here's the solution. So that was my second book. Third book is, again, I believe in higher power. I believe the greatest healer of all time is the Savior Jesus Christ. And so as I've read the scriptures and the good word, I've noticed, wow, the Savior actually used a lot of frequency and nerve principles. So my third book's called Health in the New Testament. I talk about the healings the Savior did because he's the greatest healer of all time, that he actually would use some nerve and frequency principles. And it's all throughout the scriptures. It's pretty cool. So those are my books.
Very cool. Well, I've got to add those to my reading list at this point. That last one, I'm fascinated. It's been I've had a similar passion for that topic. So I'll be especially eager to read that one.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So let's dive into, with the foundation of your background laid, let's dive into the topic for today, which is power. How are our bodies powered? We've, in prior discussions on this podcast, we've talked about metabolic energy and the importance of, the powerhouse of our cells, but I think we're talking about something even different than that today. And so we want to talk about what is it that we're talking about that does, how are our bodies powered? What drains that power? We want to talk about how you restore it, different tools that you see things that their skeptics might say like there's placebo or that can't work. But I want to get into things like humming or muscle testing and things like that if we can.
Yep, of course.
And get you to educate us on that. Nutrition, why whole food nutrition makes a difference in the power system of the body. And then ultimately how you've done some really fascinating social media posts that have just really piqued my interest. Things like temples and prayer and intention, and how those things can really impact some biometric markers, like heart rate variability. So I want to talk about all of these things and maybe just start with this question of when you talk about the body running on power, what you mean by that at the physiological level. Like, what does that lay that foundation? Because I think everything else will branch from there.
Okay. When I look at our body, I kind of compare it to a house, right? If we want to have a house, there's several things we need to have. We need to have the actual like structure, right? We need walls. We need bricks or cement, right? We need wood. So we need that. But if we just have that in our modern day, our ancestors appreciated that, right? A home. But in our modern spoiled day we're in, right, we need a little bit more, right? We need some electricity and we need plumbing, right? So when I look at the body, I look at it almost like a house, okay? And so our body, we have two different systems I look at. One of them is our organs and our muscles and our fascia. So our muscles are actually motion-based generators. That means when we exercise, when we move our muscles, we generate power. And power goes through this layer of tissue that covers the muscles called the fascia. So the fascia will actually go to not only connect different organs, the fascia doesn't only connect different muscles, but special branches go to different organs. So an example is our ab muscles. Those actually connect to the same fascia as the quads, as the muscles that go through the front of the shin, top of the foot, goes to the pec muscles, it goes to the platysma, goes to the front of the face. They're all connected by the same fascia. But not only are these muscles connected, but these special branches of fascia will go to different organs. It goes to our stomach, it goes to our thyroid, it goes to our eyes, it goes to our top molars, bottom premolars. It goes to our frontal lobe of our brain. So amazingly, different muscles will connect to different parts of the body.
So by implication, just to kind of come along the journey, because that's all connected, if we have problems with our molars, we might experience that somewhere else in the body that, a specialist is going to look at your ankles or whatever other part of your body and be confused why that problem's there, and might be related to something a totally different body system.
You got it. And that's one of the other weaknesses we see in healthcare is, it can be a strength in a way, right? I'm glad we have specialized surgeons, right? If I break my arm in half, I want a specialized surgeon in the arm to put it back together, right? They're amazing that way. But from a chronic disease and pain perspective, because we've separated the body into parts and we look at them as separate, like this doesn't affect here, we're missing some big pieces of the puzzle. And that's what when you look at the body from a power perspective,
same principle applies.
Exactly. What happens in one room of the house can affect the other. Not only electrical, but plumbing, you name it, right? So that is one of the systems. What's cool about this is people knew this thousands of years ago, acupuncture. In acupuncture, these lines they had, acupuncture lines, follow the same fascia lines in the body. So again, what they explained it maybe in a different way, but now that we have modern day technology, we can modernize it. That's why I call them the muscles, the power lines of the body and the organs. So that is one of the power systems, and that should be constantly turned on. What are other powers?
Movement, specifically, moving our muscles.
Yes, moving our muscles.
Got it.
And we'll talk about later, I'm assuming we'll talk about later why I see the power drop.
Yep, we will.
So the second system is the nerves. The nerves also use power. But what's different about the nerves is the nerves can either turn on or off. They're not constantly on, right? And so the nerves are the secondary wiring system. And so just like the home needs wires. Our wires of our body are they're the nerves. And so and that's why I have to check people's cranial nerves that I mentioned earlier, is you got the organs, you got the nerves. And what's cool is I've been able to blend, through the grace of God, right? I've been able to blend these to figure out where power drops. So here's what happens. People only get sick or stay sick when the power is low. because there's not only are these power systems, but we have other power systems like our cells, right? Your cell is your most basic unit of your body. Your cells make up your tissues make up your organs make up your entire body system, right? So a lot of things start at the cellular level. And when you look at what's called the phospholipid bilayer of a cell, that actually is a battery. So we have multiple battery systems in our body, but the important factor remains the same, is that whenever there's low power, your body can't heal and regenerate, and that's when we get sick or we get injured, and that's when we stay sick or injured and we don't recover because of low power.
How does mitochondrial function, like where does that play into all of this? Because there's been a lot written about that lately, and a lot that we've studied, in our business, thinking about metabolic health and brain health and mental health and how it all relates to mitochondrial function. But how does that connect to that overall architecture?
Yes, so I'm glad you mentioned that. That's another battery of the body, right? So we got our muscles, we got our nerves, we got our cell membranes, but also inside the cell, inside the mitochondria specifically, the mitochondria is what helps generate something called ATP.
Mm-hmm.
So ATP is like a rechargeable battery, right? When it's not charged, we have ADP, right? It's an empty battery. And when the mitochondria is functioning right, it charges up into ATP. That's when the battery's full. So that's what's amazing about the body, and you're correct. One of the ways we can track the power of the body is ATP. The way I track power in the body, though, is actually heart rate variability. So
HRV, this is one of these things that if you're wearing a Whoop band, I don't know, does Apple Watch do HRV?
I've heard it does. I don't know how accurate it is.
Yeah. Like Aura Ring, Whoop band. I mean, these
Yep.
HRV is one of the main metrics that these things are tracking. So this is what you're talking about.
Yes, exactly. So what I used to do in the past is the best, most powerful frequency power generator of the body was the heart. Okay. So there's a law you see in medicine where the body will do anything it can to keep the heart and the brain alive. Because those are the two, they're vital, right? And so I used to listen to people's hearts, and I would do a certain treatment on them. And then after, you'd hear the heart improve. You'd either hear it'd be stronger, or you could hear it more rhythmic. And so now I've been able to quantify that using HRV. So there's several things about HRV. There's several indicators that I measure. One of them is called SDNN. Okay. SDNN is like measuring voltage in the body, because power is equal to voltage times current. Okay. So SDNN, which is one of the indicators in heart rate variability, that measures the voltage. And then there's another indicator called RMSSD. That is the measurement of the current in the body, because we can have all the voltage in the world, but if we can't have a current flowing through, then it's not going to be very useful, right? So that is another indicator of heart rate variability. That is actually, I found, to be the current of the body. And then the two other factors I use are going to be coherence. Coherence is the efficiency of the body, especially between heart and brain. And then, so in other words, how efficient does that power transfer through the body? And then the last one I like to use is something called LF-HF ratio. That is the measurement. That's almost like your transformer of your body, because there's our sympathetic and our parasympathetic system. Our sympathetic is there for a reason. It's our fight or flight system. If we need to survive a stressful situation, we got to use it, right? Then our parasympathetic is our other system, which we should dominantly be on. That's like our relaxation, rest, digest system. So sympathetic can get a bad rap because a lot of people are in sympathetic overdrive, but there's some people out there who don't have enough sympathetic power. So we need that balance between the two. And that's, in my opinion, what LF-HF ratio is able to measure. So
real quick, sorry, can you
go ahead?
So are you measuring these things with different instrumentation, or is it through observable data? Is it listening? Is it like,
It's
how do you measure?
listening. So what's cool is I've tried to use some other heart rate variability measurements in the past, and I had a lot more issues using them. But there's this cool new stethoscope you can use where you can listen to the heart and you can record it.
Oh,
And then
interesting.
you can use software which uses AI that helps you generate these numbers. And this has been the fastest and the best go-to and most accurate I've seen to be able to, so I could treat people on the go.
You're getting
So
a better
that,
measurement of heart rate variability than you would if you've got a little Aura ring on or Whoop band, et cetera, because you're really getting to the
because
heart.
you listen to the source.
Yep.
Right there, the most powerful frequency generator of the body, the heart. So yeah, that's what I've used, and I actually started using it with these last couple of months, and it's been amazing.
And can you get those other metrics that you're talking about, or things that you're talking about too? Whether it's the current, is that also through listening, or how are you
Yeah.
gathering that?
Yeah, that's
data?
through listening. So what's cool is what used to take very expensive technology, you can get this data from a basic stethoscope.
Same source.
Same source.
Getting all of those measurements from your
Yep.
stethoscope, recording it,
Mhm.
and then getting it some software with AI to help you.
That helps you
extract
generate the SDNN, the RMSSD, the coherence, and the LFHF ratio.
Fascinating.
So that tells us the voltage, the current, the efficiency, and again that balance. So
Very
those are the best.
interesting.
That's the best indicator I've seen for the power of the body overall.
So sorry, one more measurement question, because I just find this fascinating.
Mhm.
So when you're talking about the cranial nerve things, and you can do that in person, or even you've learned how to do that telehealth, is that more like different tests, like observable testing that you can do to kind of measure, the effectiveness or health of those different nerve functions?
Yes, that's more of a visual functioning of the test. So that tests more visual function. So the cranial nerves, again, the nerves use power, right? They can be either
Yep.
turned on and off. And we want our nerves to be fluid. They should fire and be fluid, like boom, 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 right? But what happens with a lot of cranial nerves, due to various factors that we'll probably get into later, is when these cranial nerves play tug of war with each other, they're fighting for power, and it acts like a power drain for the body. And so when I check the cranial nerves, I'm checking which nerves are draining power. And so when we know which ones are draining power, then we just have to help retrain the body to rewire. And once you can rewire, then it's fluid, then you have enough power to function and to heal. Because a lot of people who are really seriously sick, including myself back when I was sick, is I just had enough power just to survive everyday function. But if we have enough power in our body, then our mitochondria will work and we can generate ATP and we can create new cells that work. And that's when our body can heal, is when we have enough power. But as you mentioned earlier, we need the power, but we also need the material. And that material comes from our nutrients.
Okay. So I could talk to you for hours. I cut you off midstream though. You were kind of laying the foundation of measuring these four different things, the components of HRV, things that you're looking at to dictate kind of baseline. And I cut you off. I didn't know if you wanted to go anywhere else with that.
No, I mean, it's like, so in other words, just the body's all connected. And when we look at the body from a frequency and physics perspective, we can describe so many different conditions and why people get sick. And once we know why people get sick, we know what we can do to get people better.
So for those who may not be familiar with or have never looked at HRV, is high or low heart rate variability good?
You want it to be high. And again, it depends on the metric we're talking about. So we want SDNN and RMSSD, which are the two most common. Those are the two most common measurements of heart rate variability. We want those to be high. Okay. Now, same with coherence, but when it comes to LFHF ratio, we want that to be balanced. Because again, we don't want it to be too high, don't want it to be too low, right in the middle. So that's the only one we want in the middle. But the other ones, we want them to be high.
Higher is better.
Higher is better, yes.
Okay, so tell us then, what are some of the most common things you see in people that really drain this power supply, like common problems that our modern world or just modern lifestyles um, contribute to people feeling drained and not having adequate power supply.
Okay, I'm going to name several. Number one thing I see is dental infection from root canals, metal fillings, metal implants, or even braces and retainers. Scars from surgery or trauma, including stitches, usually stitches, tattoos, toxins, emotions, emotional state, mindset, undigested proteins and fats, and airway issues. Almost all the patients I see have either one or all those indicators.
So like
that I
poor
just
gut
mentioned.
motility, like you're not digesting, processing your food fast enough, cleansing your gut.
Yep, you got it.
Bowels.
Those are the most common reasons we see the power drop in the body.
Very interesting. Okay, so a lot of those I would have expected. The dental implants, braces, and maybe tattoos and other things that I would not have expected to be on that list. Tell us more about that. I'm assuming for most people listening, that's going to be a novel thought, like something they haven't ever considered.
It will be. Okay, so here's why. Our teeth are like our circuit breakers of our body. Okay, if we walk in a room and we try to turn on the light and the light won't turn on, and we try to plug our phone in the room, the phone won't plug in, we know, okay, there's no power in this room. If there's no power in this room, what do we go to?
Circuit breaker.
Circuit breaker, right? We go to our circuit breaker, we open it in the garage or wherever it's located, and sure enough, one of those circuit breakers are flipped. Once we flip it back, that room powers up again. Our teeth are our circuit breakers of our body. And so, like I mentioned to you before, different muscles, different organs, or different muscles attached to the fascia to different organs, but different fascia will actually attach to different teeth. So our top molars and bottom premolars, those actually those help our stomach, spleen, and pancreas. Our bottom molars, top premolars, help our lung and large intestine. Our canines help fire our liver and our gallbladder. And then our front four teeth, top and bottom incisors, they help fire our kidney and our bladder. And then our wisdom teeth fire our heart, small intestine, and sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves. So whenever there is infection in these areas, it's like flipping a circuit breaker. The rest of the organs will have little to no power. Here's why. So the most common one is root canals. So what a root canal is when they drill through a tooth, they remove the arteries, nerves, and veins, and then they fill the tooth in. You've basically taken away the nerve and blood supply from a tissue that requires it. The problem with that is around the tooth, there's this layer of tissue called the dentin. And the dentin requires the blood supply because that blood supply brings oxygen, right? And when an area or a tissue does not have oxygen, what happens to it?
It's going to die.
It's going to die, right? So that's what you commonly see in root canals. Root canals are a dead tooth. So interestingly, the guy who originally created the root canal procedure, he spent the last years of his life trying to get other dentists to stop doing it.
Oh, really?
So nothing against the dentist per se, right? It's just the way they've been trained, right? And so there's a whole book written about it called The Root Canal Cover-Up. So there's one researcher, what he did is he found a common denominator for all his sick patients was that they all had dental infection. Most of them had root canals. So what he did is he took their root canal teeth and he let it soak in water for 24 hours. And he gave a drop of that water and gave it to lab rats. It was so toxic to the lab rats that they all died within a minute.
No way.
So they went and they researched, okay, what was in here that made these lab rats sick? Because you think about rats, right? They're around some of the nastiest stuff. They got strong immune systems. But the fact that they died from just one drop tells us there's something very toxic in here. So when they did some of the checks on what microbial toxicity was in there, they found something called thioethers and gliotoxins. Thioethers are essentially bad bacteria. Gliotoxins are bad mold and fungus. Another researcher, he had several groups of patients. He had a group that had autoimmune disease, a group that had cancer, a group that had arthritis, a group that had nerve disorders, and he had found they also all had root canals. He took their root canal teeth and implanted them in rabbits. The rabbits that got it from the arthritis patients got arthritis. The rabbits that got it from the cancer patients got cancer. The rabbits that got it from the autoimmune patients got autoimmune. The animals got the same sickness that the person did, all from the infected teeth. So this often goes missed because when the type of imaging that's commonly taken is what's called a two-dimensional dental x-ray, you need more than 50% bone loss to catch infection. So the only way you can catch this is through something called a 3D cone beam scan. And so you have to go to a dentist who's trained to read it and trained to take the right image. It's called a biological dentist, in which I have to refer tons of my patients to.
Is that how common is that? Are there biological dentists?
There's not a lot. Not a lot that, it's a very loose term. There's not a lot you can necessarily trust. It's a specialty.
Okay, so the same way somebody could go specialize and become an endodontist or a periodontist, there's a difference. Well, I feel like I can go in higher detail with this podcast. Okay.
All right.
Let's do it.
I think we will. I never want to step on people's toes.
No.
I want to speak truth and help people, right? Since we already talked about insurance, we'll go down this rabbit hole. When you think about our education system, one way you can brainwash people is you give them high amounts of information and little sleep. And what do we call that? Medical school. And doctorate programs. Yeah. And I feel this way in every profession. Every profession is very dogmatic. I heard this in my own profession, right? Oh, chiropractors, we're the best. I've heard it from, doctors, medical doctors, we're the best. DOs, we're the best. PTs, we're the best. Dentists, we're the best. Why does every profession think they're the best? Well, they gave us high amounts of information and little sleep, which is the doctorate programs. So when they do that, again, it's a bit of a brainwash. And so sadly, most of these school systems, it's a bit of a brainwash and they're behind the times. I'd say 20, 30 years behind the times. The only way to get trained in these principles, you got to go to the private sector. The private sector has all the best training. And so these biological dentists have to go to the private sector. One of them is called IAOMT. It's basically a branch that helps try to train biological dentists. We got two biological dentists here in Utah that will do trainings, but we need to have more of these dentists because this single factor, if we could change this in healthcare, we would save more lives than anything.
I have never heard this.
Really?
No. Well, no, I take that back. You mentioned something briefly when we chatted at the event.
Yep.
But that was the first I'd ever even thought about this idea.
Yeah. And so what's interesting is, well, I'll go into more detail. I guess we'll talk about it now. So different organs will actually respond to different emotions too. Okay. Anger affects our liver and our gallbladders. And so worry affects our spleens, stomachs, and pancreas. So interestingly, people with infection in a certain tooth will feel a certain emotion. And when you look at things such as addiction, a lot of people go to addictions because they're feeling a certain emotion in the first place and they're wanting to overcome that emotion, right?
Alleviate or overcome.
Right. So like they turn to, substances or whatever it might be, right? So anyway, the body, the power system's there. And so, yes, this is such a big deal. And I can't emphasize enough. If we could change this one thing in healthcare, we'd save so many lives.
Who is mapping? Sorry, I'm cutting you off again. Who is mapping? Like when we talk about the teeth being connected to different organs or different connections there throughout the body, who is doing that mapping, and how do you learn about that? Is that something that is common to learn, say, in chiropractic school about some of these connections, or is this something you've had to educate yourself on subsequently?
Amazingly, I had one professor that actually talked about it.
Hmm.
But you learn so much in school that,
Yes,
you know, not everyone grasps that one thing.
is retained.
I did have one professor that talked about it, but I knew this before school. You know, different professionals have mapped these things. A dentist, acupuncturist, other practitioners. But this has been mapped out, but I can confirm this map just because this is what I've seen clinically with patients.
Yeah.
So an example is breast cancer. All breast cancer patients either have a root canal or a metal filling or a titanium implant on the top molars or bottom premolars. And that's the same with testicular cancer.
Wow.
All lung, large intestine, whether it be cancers or other issues with the lung, large intestine, like polyps, right? Those are usually infection in top premolars, bottom molars. So you can track the exact, and I've seen this pattern thousands of times. So it's
Wow.
legit. It's real.
Wow. So fascinating.
Yeah.
And it's a paradigm shift, thinking about how are we going to intervene when we're facing a chronic problem? What are we going to do about it? I mean, this whole way of thinking is just changes all of that in terms of what are you examining and where are you trying to intervene?
Yeah.
Very interesting.
So, but once we know the pattern, we get the person to the right dentist. The dentist gets the infection out, and it's a major game changer. Obviously, you have to do the other factors, and we got to raise the power up. But I've seen that 80% of the body's power can be knocked out just from infection.
See, that is remarkable. I want to spend more time learning about that because that is a remarkable thought.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we could almost, we've already covered a lot. We could cut hours
on that,
and sure. I didn't even get into the metal part or the retainers or braces, but yeah, it's a big deal.
You did a social post the other day, even about earrings, you know, putting piercing or perforating different parts of your ear and how that will connect and affect different parts of your body.
Mm-hmm.
Again,
see it happen all the time.
Thoughts that I have never even considered.
Yeah. But again, these people knew about these principles, I feel like, years ago and Eastern medicine. And so we're trying to bridge that gap between Eastern and Western medicine, right? That's what we need to do so people understand these principles work. They're true.
One of the things I love about these conversations are simply that there are people who have tried lots of things to get better from different healthcare challenges and nothing's helping. And sometimes giving them a new construct to think about approaching it in a different way is all it takes to say there's hope, you know, and then I can go explore this new thing. But I feel like so often we get just stuck in thinking about just the same paradigm, and we try to somehow find the solution to that same paradigm over and over and over. And this is a completely different paradigm, thinking about how to examine, assess, and treat different healthcare challenges.
It's the why, right? And that's what my frustration when I was a patient is. I was only chasing like imaging or blood tests, which, you know, can tell us a story, right? But it never told me why.
To the root cause.
Because it was looking at maybe mostly the chemistry. We're trying to look at the physics.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Because we don't have hours, we only have a shorter time. I'd love to go to some myth busting questions. We try to do myth busting questions on all of our conversations. So muscle testing. I've seen it happen. My first time seeing it, I was also serving as a missionary, and somebody did it based on like checking to see, I think it was like a food that he felt like, hey, which of these nutrients might you be deficient in, and kind of did a muscle testing thing. And it seemed to work. And I was like, is that real, or is that just me make believe? So muscle testing, placebo or physiologically like valid test?
Physiologically valid. Here's why. Think about, there's a principle in physics called constructive or destructive interference. So if this is a frequency and I take it and I flip it and we put the reversal to it, because this is opposite of this, it's going to cancel this out. It's called destructive interference. So in our modern day technology, an example of what uses that is those noise canceling headphones. When people put those on, it takes the frequency that's coming in, it puts the reversal on it, that cancels it out so you don't hear what's coming in. It's called destructive interference. So this applies to muscle testing, is that...
And the idea with muscle testing is maybe you could describe it better than I. Go ahead.
So basically, muscle testing, or I call it evaluative kinesiology, where that's when you put, like, whether it's a food, a supplement, or even a thought, and you think about something, and if it's something that's good for the body, it'll strengthen the body. If it's something that's not good for the body, it'll go weak.
So you'd put your hand out, somebody would press kind of put resistance on that hand, and your job is to try to resist, and you kind of assess, are you able to be strong, or is there give?
Is it give? Right, yeah. If it's strong, it's good for the body. If it's weak, it's not good for the body. So from a frequency perspective, if we have one frequency and we add the same frequency, it amplifies it, right?
Right.
So that's the same reason why muscle testing works, is we are taking a food, a supplement, a thought, frequency, whatever it might be. And if it strengthens the body, it's constructive interference. It amplifies it, which strengthens the body. If it's something that weakens the body or the body doesn't do well with, that's destructive interference. It takes the frequency off, which weakens it. Does that make sense?
That does make sense.
So that's how it works. My favorite way to test is I like to put the thumb and the ring finger together, or the thumb and the pointer finger together, and try to pull it apart on someone. The reason is when we put the thumb and the ring finger together, we're putting a plus finger to a minus finger. So that's just like taking a plus end of a magnet to a minus end of a magnet. When it's opposite, it's strong. So I'll have them try to resist, and it'll be strong. And then I'll have them put their pointer finger and middle finger in their belly button, and I'll retest, and that'll go weak. So that just shows us what's strong, what's weak. And then you can put either, again, food, supplement, whatever in the belly button and retest. And if it's strong, their body needs it. If it's weak, that doesn't. What's amazing is I've worked on some of the strongest athletes, rugby guys, hockey, football, basketball. They'll do everything they can to keep their finger strong, and then when they put it in the belly button, it goes weak. So it's an amazing test, and it's very accurate, but it's actually a physics principle.
Fascinating. Do you ever encounter people that are really skeptical of this?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
But once you show them and they understand the why, it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now I understand. And people just need to know the why.
See, yeah. I mean, I think I was a skeptic, and then I've seen people have these kind of muscle tests that I know maybe likewise are skeptical, and like, that was crazy. Like, there's no way. Like, that really changed.
And you think about our ancestors. I mean, they didn't have the technology we had.
Yep.
They had all these plants everywhere. Is this one poisonous or not? They had to have some ways that God's given them to test. And that's why it's cool that we're having what I call a remembrance, right, of these principles.
I love that framing of it.
Yep.
Okay, how about next one? And I think you may have already answered this one to some extent, but these energy-based interventions or therapies are not measurable. Myth, truth or false?
It's false now, because again, what I find is HRV is actually the best indicator. That tells us, again, the voltage, the current, the efficiency, and the balance. It's hands down the best indicator of frequency and physics in the body, from what I've seen, that our Western medicine will accept too. So that's what's cool.
Man, I've seen some of your things that you've posted about with actual client or patient data about prayer interventions and changing HRV, or temple attendance and worship and changing HRV. And it's fascinating to try to put a biometric to what people intuitively will say, I feel better. I feel more energized, or I feel more clarity of thought, or whatever. But trying to put a biometric to that is just fascinating to me.
I've seen it time and time again.
Okay. How about this? This was a fascinating thing, because at our event, when you came up and we were introducing Core 7 to the group of you, one of the attendees there they were going through, we had these different products set out, and they were sampling them, and you did a test where she would touch your finger, then, close her eyes, touch your nose, and then come back and try to touch your finger again, but with her eyes closed.
Mm-hmm.
And so she did a number of tests, different directions. And I saw this after the fact. I saw a video of it. I didn't actually see you doing it.
Yep.
And then it, like, miraculously, you had her take this whole food-based product and hum. So there was also some vibration thing with the humming or something,
Mm-hmm.
and then retest. And all of a sudden it was very accurate, where before she couldn't do that. Yep. I just have been dying to ask you about that and how that worked and why that is a test and what you're testing.
Okay. So it's called a cerebellum test, at least on the outside. So it's called I call it the finger to nose test. So what I'll do is I'll have a patient hold their finger out, and I'll have them take the tip of their finger and then have them touch the tip of their nose. And when we're holding it to the outside, we're testing the same side cerebellum. Okay. So when I have them close their eyes and do it, if they're on, then we know their brain knows where their body is in space. However, if they keep missing it, and I have them open their eyes and I move my finger and they keep going to the outside,
high or low or to the outside or whatever,
their brain doesn't know where their body is in space, specifically the cerebellum. Okay. So when we cross midline, so if I bring cross the arm midline and we do the same test, we're testing the opposite side frontal lobe. And so when I do it, I'll do it on each side, and that'll tell me if both cerebellums or the frontal lobes, if those parts of the brain knows where the body is in space. So at the event, this person, I don't remember which one it was, but
Lizzie was her name.
Yep. Yeah. I don't remember which one. Sorry, I don't remember which lobe of the brain it was, but on one of them or two of them, they were off. Their brain didn't know where their body is in space. So that's when I thought, oh, this is the perfect opportunity to test Core 7, right? So again, for the power to be there, we need the wires, but the wires need nutrients, right? So the nutrients help provide the material for the wires, but we still need power. So what I had them do is I had them put the Core 7 in their mouth, and I had them hum. The reason humming works is humming helps tap into the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is one of the longest nerves in the body.
Connected to both sending and receiving messages all throughout the body.
Exactly. And my colleagues and I, when we played with this, there's people who've had little to no feeling in their feet. And when we put power in that vagus nerve, all of a sudden their feet feel stimulation. It's incredible. Very powerful from a frequency perspective in the body. So when you hum, you help power up that vagus nerve. But then when you hum with the nutrient in, that acts like a wire, and it helps remyelinate and rewire some of these nerves. So that's why when we tested after,
it was instantaneous.
Yeah, her brain knew where her body was in space. Now, I've seen multiple things can work to help correct that, but at the time I was like, okay, what's the fastest way we can correct it? Nutrient, that'll give us the wiring, the material, and the vagus nerve, the humming, will help send the input in that wire. And so that's what helped corrected it instantaneously.
See, I would not have believed that had I not known this person that did it, and then seen it and seen the reactions and seen how immediate, like, it was pretty remarkable.
Oh yeah. I've seen this happen all the time. But again, that tells us that the nutrient's working. It actually has not only the proper nutrients, but the body can absorb it quickly. And that's one of the reasons
that was
it
the whole
worked.
premise of, and I loved that as a person who spent the last year and a half trying to source a whole food based, very comprehensive, highest quality, most complete supplement we could create all in one. So that made me thrilled. And I'm like, man, if I did not see that and I didn't know the person who did it, I would have thought that was staged. And there was no way. That was remarkable.
It's pretty cool. What's cool about that test, I've done it on people who weren't able to use their arms, or maybe who weren't they're like conscious, but I tested through someone else, and you can correct anyway.
Wow.
That's another story for another time, but it's work. These principles work. It's all frequency physics, nerve principles.
Okay. So you mentioned some of the things that drain power, and there's maybe some more, but I wanted to start talking maybe a little bit more on how to restore it. But other things you already mentioned teeth, you mentioned tattoos, you mentioned emotional stress, trauma, but I'm guessing there's maybe even, and you did mention, I think you mentioned like breathing or gut problems.
it's going to be GI issues, overly acidic colons from not breaking down proteins and fats, but also airway issues.
Yep. And maybe structural. Are there often structural things that as well in the autonomy?
Yeah, there can
anatomy,
be.
Excuse me.
Yeah. No, there definitely can be structural things as well, but the structural I see are usually caused by the other things that I mentioned.
Interesting.
Those are what's caused the structural. The structural is usually secondary to those things.
Okay. Well, so what maybe do you have any other thoughts that we haven't covered yet on what it takes, like to you meet with a patient, they have something, you do some of these tests to try to figure out what the root cause is, and how do you go about restoring that? Like, what does a comprehensive plan look like for somebody who's, whether it's a chronic pain issue or whatever, and your task is helping them fix that problem? How do you create a plan that is comprehensive and reactivate the body's power supply?
So again, what I tell people though is God does all the healing. These are just tools and instruments in His hands, right? So credit to above. What the way that God's made our bodies is He made them repair and they self-renew when the circumstances are right? And so what you see with patients is some of these things you can correct on the spot. That's the case with scars and tattoos. I can correct those on the spot using light and stuff. But as far as other things, people do have homework because things aren't usually an overnight fix, right? Different tissues have different regeneration rates. So when I was sick, I started to notice a difference within 2 weeks because most of mine was GI. And so your GI tract, it repairs itself every 3 to 5 days because it goes through a lot, right? It's faster. It has to recover faster. But things like nerves take a little bit longer, right? Nerves can take 9 to 12 months. So with what happens is people come in and it's like they're a dead car battery. When you're a dead car battery, you need a jump start, right? And that's what I'm there to provide, is that jump start. But you need to maintain that power to be able to heal, right? And so, yes, I'll give people protocols of some of these things they need to do at home to help keep that power up and to help rewire the nerves. Because when these nerves are playing tug of war with each other, some of them have been doing it for months, years, right? So you need to rewire it, which can take some time. For some people, it's 9 to 12 months. But the good news is there's light at the end of the tunnel, right? And so, yes, again, I'm not a fan of sick care. My whole goal is that people just see me once, and that's it, that they don't need to see me again.
So categorically, what are some of those things that might be homework? Is it movement related? Is you hear like sauna or light exposure or nutrition related, or what are some of the categorical things that people might do?
So one of them obviously is digestion, right? A lot of the food, terrible nutrients, and people aren't digesting. So you need to change people's diets, but make sure they actually digest again. And when they can't digest, sometimes you need a little extra help, right? So that's some people need that. Other people, again, need nerve exercises. And so these people with nerve exercises, there's simple things you can do with the nerves that retrain them to be fluid. And it involves humming with a Q-tip and stimulating a certain nerve. And the reason it works is when we hum, not only does it help the vagus nerve, but we generate nitric oxide, which is a neurotransmitter. So you hum, you generate nitric oxide, and then you stimulate the nerve. It's deficient, and it acts like a current, and it drives the nitric oxide into that current, and then you swallow after. When you swallow after, you create a new synapse. So this is one of the things that patients have to do depending on which cranial nerves are off to help them to recalibrate and be fluid again instead of fight each other, which again can take 9 to 12 months. It's a patience game. Other people, again, who have dental infection, you have to get them into a biological dentist, and there's things you can do to keep things at bay until they get the teeth corrected. But the good news is In my experience, no matter what someone's suffering with, there's hope for anything.
Whether it's chronic fatigue, mental health related depression and anxiety, chronic pain,
Yes,
etc.
you name it.
Hmm.
And so yeah, there's emotional things people can do too, right? And some of these emotions that people are feeling, like anxiety, I find is always low power in the sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves. I mentioned some people with fear, they usually have low power in their kidney and bladder. So what's cool is once you start to get these nerves firing again, get these organs firing, then some of those emotions can go away.
Fascinating. Okay. What do you, and maybe I'll save that question. Tell us, if you would, just because I thought it was a fascinating thing,
Mhm.
and I think other people did too, but you made this interesting post that I saw on social media about light and temples and symbols at temple and how those impact energy. I would love for you to maybe just say a word or two about that, because that was, again, something that we intuitively, you go through an experience such as going to a temple, having some kind of worship experience that makes you feel that in a beautiful place like that. You leave feeling different, but you described maybe a reason why.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us more about that.
Yes, God is in the details of everything. So throughout all this earth, there's these things called grid lines. And where they intersect, they're known as places of healing. So
For example,
well, the this is going to be something our ancestors knew about that's making a comeback, but something such as they have something called water lines. There's Curry or Hartman grid lines. So those are some names of lines of some people who discovered them, right?
Mm-hmm.
For different names. And so where they cross, they're places of healing. So when canines or like dogs get sick or injured, they'll go lay down at an intersecting grid line to heal. They're like natural power spots on the earth. Birds will fly around intersecting grid lines. So nature knows this, animals know this, but where they're not crossing, they can actually have harmful energy to them. So ant mounds you always find on non-intersecting grid lines where things aren't healing as much. And so it's interesting. You see these patterns in nature. So one of the people who more modernized more of this, someone named Dr. Ibrahim Karim. He's from Egypt, and he's an architect. And he went to the Louvre Museum in France, and they were going to destroy these old Egyptian notes. And they saw he was Egyptian, and he happened to be there that day. And they said, "We got these old notes. We're going to destroy them, but we saw you're Egyptian. Maybe you'll be interested." He's like, "Sure, I'll take a look." And because he was an architect, these notes talked about different ways you can measure the grid lines. So he started to play with it, and he found, okay, the pyramids are built on intersecting grid lines. A lot of the ancient temples, cathedrals were also built on intersecting grid lines because they're places of healing. So there is this town in Switzerland where they built a cell phone tower on an old cathedral, and it made everyone in the city sick, including animals and livestock. So when animals and livestock get sick, and plants, you know it's bad. So they tried everything they couldn't figure out, so they brought him in, and he used basic shapes, and he balanced it out using the methods he learned, and everyone in the town got better, including animals and livestock. When animals and livestock get better, you know it's not a placebo. They call it the miracle of Hemberg. And the local authorities, who are even more, science-based minded, they were like, okay, this is legit. So I call it the physics of shape. So anyway, temples are built at intersecting grid lines because they're a place of healing. But it's not only where they're built, but their shape. Different shapes, like a square, it actually is what we call a platonic solid. And a platonic solid is a certain shape where when scalar frequency from the sun implodes into it, it raises the power of everyone inside it and around it. And it's not only the shape, it's the location, it's the shape, it's the color. The colors they use and the symbols are actually things that actually transmute harmful EMF. So it's not toxic to the body. So a lot of people don't know about this, but I wanted to quantify it. So yeah, I took my heart rate variability before and after, and sure enough, it increased just by going to a temple, place of worship. So that tells us the power in the body raised. But again, all power comes from above. These are just tools and instruments in his hands, right?
I mean, that is a premise that I fundamentally believe in, which is that you said something earlier to the effect that we were created to be resilient and to be healthy and to be able to regenerate and to be exposed to extreme or sickness or whatever and return to a state of homeostasis and health. But we have to activate or unlock our body's ability to do so, especially when we've artificially, introduced things that are harmful to our ability to do that, such as sitting in a 70-degree temperature in a chair, 10 hours a day or whatever that looks like. But I do believe that if so many of the things that you've talked about there are different ways of trying to unlock kind of nascent capabilities that our body has to heal and be strong.
Yep.
So it's very fun to do. Okay. So, I want to conclude maybe with just a story or two, and then maybe, simple tips, practical advice for people who are listening and are intrigued by this, as well as maybe a word to any skeptics who might be listening. But maybe, are there any stories that really stand out to you of people who've come to you with a problem that was really entrenched and you've been able to help them find a solution?
Yes, I had a mom a couple of months ago who they couldn't really even be around their family. They had such severe shaking and such severe anxiety that they could hardly function. And so we found the source of the low power, and one of which was dental infection. Other was some nerve issues, and they went and got that corrected. We powered them up, and they were finally able to go home to their family, and people were shocked to see that their posture changed. And again, it's such simple principles, but again, credit to above. Like, these are just tools and instruments in his hands.
But addressing severe anxiety and shaking through dental work. I mean, that's remarkable.
And getting the nerves to fire again. Yep.
So what do you say to somebody who's listening to this who is intrigued? Maybe they've tried everything, but they're listening to this and feeling hopeful, and they're like, what do I do next? Like, how do I engage? First of all, how do they engage and interact with you and learn more? But also, just generally, like, what advice would you give to people who are sitting home wondering, I wonder if this is a solution for me?
So the first thing I'd say is, please don't give up hope, because I was in your shoes too, right? I had tried everything as well. And when you're near the end, you want to give up on hope. But whether it's my stuff, whether it's someone else's, whatever you're led and guided to, I believe there's always hope. And that's what you have to hold on to. You have to hold on to that hope. So if you feel like this is something that resonates with you, you can always contact us. Our website's healingplaybook.com. Or if you're wanting more information, some of the data I showed, you can see it on Instagram. Follow us at Healing Playbook.
It's not only informative and what's the word I'm looking for? Surprising, but it's also very fun and entertaining. You make it very fun.
Yeah, well, thank you. I love that movie, Patch Adams, who's a real person.
Yeah.
And I believe laughter is healing. So I embarrass myself a lot in the name of helping people get laughs, because I think, health, if people laugh at me or what I do or my family does, that's healing. That's great. So we try to make it fun. I try to be like the Patch Adams of chiropractic, I say.
Very fun. It is fun, and it's worth following. Not, sometimes you get your feed full of stuff that is not worth following, but yours is worth following.
Oh, very gracious of you. Thank you.
What do you say to people who are skeptical? Because they're out there, and there's probably a lot of them that you encounter that are maybe kind of skeptical of, this feels fringe, or this feels like it's not well enough researched enough. What do you say to those people who might be hearing this?
Several things. First is I was the biggest skeptic myself
Hmm.
because I had tried everything, right? If I tried everything and none of it worked, what is going to help, right? So I was the number one skeptic, but I sadly had to go through things the hard way to find out. And not that God wants us to be miserable, right? But sometimes the greatest teacher is trials. So I wouldn't have believed these principles had I not gone through it myself, right? The other thing is when I talk about the skeptics is I hear a lot of people think, we need peer review research, right? Which, peer review research is good. Some of the research you see that can be biased because not every research article gets approved, right? There are things that were researched that shown to be bad that they didn't want the public to see. There can be skewed results in the research, but not that all research is bad, right? If it's done right, it's good, right? But we also need pioneers. If Nikola Tesla had only done things that were research-based, would he be able to discover his discoveries? No. We have to have pioneers, and right now this is truly a pioneering work. So, no, I don't have everything that's peer-reviewed, whatever, but I'm starting to get more and more data, and that's why I'm sharing it through this heart rate variability changes.
When my dad passed away last August, so a year and a half ago, pancreatic cancer, and as he was undergoing treatment and getting consultations from different doctors at I won't name the institutions, but different institutions, I would suggest these different adjacent therapies that could be explored, more that live in the integrative oncology space, whether they were with fasting protocols or even things like turmeric interventions or high dose vitamin C or whatever of these other things. I was just gathering a collection of where is there something that would give us hope, because we know the statistics for chemotherapy and that's not very hopeful. And so here's other things that might either make that a more effective treatment that there's promising data for, or here's some things that actually have shown even more profound results, but they weren't double-blind controlled studies. And so it was very interesting to have the physicians, suggest that they'd be dismissive of these articles that I would bring them because they weren't these large scale studies. And at the same time, they'd try to enroll them in clinical trials, which I'm like, well, that's not either. You're experimenting on him because you want that test that you're telling me I don't have with this. But it was just frustrating that was the response of the medical community to things that anecdotally I've seen help, such as fasting protocols during chemotherapy and with other people. And so I think we do have a problem societally, and we do need a paradigm shift to be more open to things that are emerging and ask the question, why, is there money behind this? Because oftentimes the reason something hasn't been done in a large scale, well-designed clinical trial is because there's not enough money to be made from the outcome, because it's a simple intervention that could be accessible to everybody for free.
Yep. So 2 things I want to mention on that. First is, people looking for double blind, which again, that's great. That's the gold standard. I agree. But when you look at the data, they find the case studies where it's just like even an individual case study can have actually similar statistics to the double blind. So even if we start at case studies, that's huge. That's what I'm trying to do, right, with this data. But also, we need to change the culture and the laws. In the United States, it's against the law to study a conventional cancer treatment method like chemotherapy or radiation to a non. You can't. It's illegal in the United States according to FDA. Only there's one research study has come out of Canada, and they did conventional cancer treatment therapies compared to the others. They found the conventional people did live 3 months longer, but the quality of life was, a lot of them ended up having organ failure, and they only lived 3 months longer and had a worse quality, more pain. So from a culture perspective, if we don't change the laws, we won't know if some of these other techniques will work, right? Because it's against the law. But we need to change things from a culture perspective. But even those individual case studies can tell you the big picture.
That's what I think you're right. You made a good point, which is we can't be dismissive of that standard of creating something that wide scale societally we adopt and embrace. We should have well-designed control studies, double-blinded control studies to the extent possible. And I wish we just weren't as close-minded to stuff that is emerging and not there yet, and maybe never get there because there's not enough money to be made in it.
Yep. And some of the horror stories I've heard going through I've heard it from people who are in research, like in undergrad, saying, "Yeah, we fudge numbers for research purposes." I've heard it from people before. Like, "Oh, I don't want to hear that. I just want the data."
There's some really interesting data on SSRIs and some of what was done, and with a Freedom of Information Act request. An author, Johan Hari, has gotten some really interesting data to show exactly, like, very, very much cherry picking in order to get something approved, when really most of the data is not very compelling, if at all, suggesting most of the benefit is placebo. And so you just have to be careful what we believe, and not dismiss anecdotal evidence of what is working. You know what I mean? Which is what you're saying.
Exactly. And that's why I always tell people, again, you got to stay close to God. And we have, God gives us like the spirit and impressions and thoughts. And when it's something that feels good or feels right, that's something you need to chase. If it doesn't feel right, don't do it. All right.
Yeah. Okay. This has been fascinating to me. It's caused me to ask a bunch of questions that I'm going to go learn more about and research and explore. And I'm grateful for the work that you're doing to provide support for people in new ways, and give people hope that are stuck. And so congratulations on a bold move to Utah. Congratulations on a bold move professionally to be doing innovative things. And I hope we get to stay in touch and hopefully talk more and go deeper down some of these rabbit holes.
Yes.
So thank you, Chase. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Core Conversations. If you are interested in this topic, follow Chase and Ashley at thehealingplaybook.com. If you're interested in what we're doing at Ampelis and Core 7 with what we believe is a remarkably impactful whole food based supplement, you can find more about that at getcore7.com. Please join us again for another conversation, and thanks for your time.
Unlock your innate abilities for health. Core Conversations. Core Conversations.